Hello, Cardinals, and welcome to our first installment of Toni Morrison's Beloved. 1. 124 was spiteful, full of baby's venom. The women in the house knew it, and so did the children. For years, each put up with the spite in his own way. But by 1873, Setha and her daughter Denver were its only victims. The grandmother, Baby Suggs, was dead. The sons, Howard and Bugler, had run away by the time they were 13 years old. As soon as merely looking in a mirror shattered it, that was the signal for Bugler. As soon as 2 tiny handprints appeared in the cake, that was it for Howard. Neither boy waited to see more. Another kettle full of chickpeas smoking in a heap on the floor, soda crackers crumbled and strewn in a line next to the door still. Nor did they wait for one of their relief periods, the weeks, months even, when nothing was disturbed. No. Each one fled at once the moment the house committed what was for him the one insult not to be borne or witnessed a second time. Within 2 months, in the dead of winter, leaving their grandmother, Baby Suggs, Setha, their mother, and their little sister Denver all by themselves in the gray and white house on Bluestone Road. It didn't have a number then because Cincinnati didn't stretch that far. In fact, Ohio had been calling itself a state only 70 years when first one brother, and then the next, stuffed quilt packing into his hat, snatched up his shoes, and crept away from the lively spite the house felt for them. Baby Suggs didn't even raise her head. From her sickbed she heard them go, but that wasn't the reason she lay still. It was a wonder to her that her grandsons had taken so long to realize that every house wasn't like the one on Bluestone Road. Suspended between the nastiness of life and the meanness of the dead, she couldn't get interested in leaving life or living it, let alone the fright of 2 creeping off boys. Her past had been like her present, intolerable, and since she knew death was anything but forgetfulness, she used the little energy she had left for pondering color. Bring a little lavender in, if you got any, pink if you don't. And Setha would oblige her with anything from fabric to her own tongue. Winter in Ohio was especially rough if you had an appetite for color. Sky provided the only drama, and counting on the Cincinnati horizon for life's principal joy was reckless indeed. So Setha and the girl Denver did what they could and what the house permitted for her. Together, they waged a perfunctory battle against the outrageous behavior of that place, against turned-over slop jars, smacks on the behind, and gusts of sour air. For they understood the source of the outrage as well as they knew the source of light. Baby Suggs died shortly after the brothers left, with no interest whatsoever in their leave-taking or hers, and right afterwards Setha and Denver decided to end the persecution by calling forth the ghost that tried them so. Perhaps a conversation, they thought, an exchange of views or something would help. So they held hands and said, come on, you may as well just come on. The sideboard took a step forward, but nothing else did. Grandma Baby must be stopping it, said Denver. She was 10 and still mad at Baby Suggs for dying. Setha opened her eyes. I doubt that, she said. Then why don't it come? You're forgetting how little it is, said her mother. She wasn't even 2 years old when she died. Too little to understand, too little to talk much even. Maybe she don't want to understand, said Denver. Maybe, but if she'd only come, I could make it clear to her. Setha released her daughter's hand, and together they pushed the sideboard back against the wall. Outside, a driver whipped his horse into a gallop local people felt necessary when they passed 124. For a baby, she throws a powerful spell, said Denver. No more powerful than the way I loved her, Setha answered. And there it was again, the welcoming cool of unchiseled headstones, the one she selected to lean against on tiptoe, her knees wide open as any grave. Pink as a fingernail it was, and sprinkled with glittering chips. 10 minutes, he said. You got 10 minutes, I'll do it for free. 10 minutes for 7 letters. With another 10 could she have gotten dearly, too. She had not thought to ask him, and it bothered her still that it might have been possible, that for 20 minutes, a half hour, say, she could have had the whole thing, every word she heard the preacher say at the funeral, and all there was to say, surely, engraved on her baby's headstone, dearly beloved. But what she got, settled for, was the one word that mattered. She thought it would be enough, running among the headstones with the engraver, his young son looking on, the anger in his face so old, the appetite in it quite new. That should certainly be enough to answer one more preacher, one more abolitionist in a town full of disgust. Counting on the stillness of her own soul, she had forgotten the other one, the soul of her baby girl. Who would have thought that a little old baby could harbor so much rage? Running among the stones under the eyes of the engraver's son was not enough. Not only did she have to live out her years in a house palsied by the baby's fury at having its throat cut, but those 10 minutes she spent pressed up against the dawn-colored stones studded with star chips, her knees wide open as the grave, were longer than life, more alive, more pulsating than the baby blood that soaked her fingers like oil. "We could move," she suggested once to her mother-in-law. "What'd be the points?" asked baby Suggs. "Not a house in the country that ain't packed to the rafters with some dead Negro's grief. We lucky this ghost is a baby. My husband's spirit was to come back here, or yours? Don't talk to me. You lucky, you got 3 left. 3 pulling at your skirts and just 1 raising hell from the other side. Be thankful, why don't you? I had 8. Every one of them gone away from me, 4 taken, 4 chased, and all I expect worrying somebody's house into evil." Baby Suggs rubbed her eyebrows. "My firstborn, all I can remember of her is how she loved the burned bottom of bread. Can you beat that? 8 children, and that's all I remember." "That's all you let yourself remember," Setha had told her. But she was down to 1 herself. 1 alive, that is. The boys chased off by the dead one, and her memory of Bugler was fading fast. Howard at least had a head shape nobody forget. As for the rest, she worked hard to remember as close to nothing as was safe. Unfortunately, her brain was devious. She might be hurrying across a field, running practically to get to the pump quickly and rinse the chamomile sap from her legs. Nothing else would be in her mind. The picture of the men coming to nurse her was as lifeless as the nerves in her back, where the skin buckled like a washboard. Nor was there the faintest scent of ink in the cherry gum and the oak bark from which it was made. Nothing. Just the breeze cooling her face as she rushed towards water, and then sopping the chamomile away with the pump water and rags, her mind fixed on getting every last bit of sap off, on her carelessness in taking a shortcut across the field just to save a half-mile, and not noticing how high the weeds had grown until the itching was all the way to her knees. And then something. The plash of water, the sight of her shoes, the stockings awry on the path where she had flung them, or here, boy, lapping in a puddle near her feet, and suddenly there was Sweet Home, rolling out before her eyes. And although there was not a leaf on that farm that did not make her want to scream, it rolled itself out before her in shameless beauty. It never looked as terrible as it was, and it made her wonder if hell was a pretty place, too. Fire and brimstone, all right, but hidden in lacy groves. Boys hanging from the most beautiful sycamores in the world. It shamed her, remembering the wonderful sowing the trees rather than the boys. Try as she might to make it otherwise, the sycamores beat out the children every time, and she could not forgive her memory for that. When the last of the chamomile was gone, she went around the front of the house, collecting her shoes and stockings on the way. As if to punish her further for her terrible memory, sitting on the porch not 40 feet away was Paul D., the last of the Sweet Home men. And although she could never mistake his face for another's, she said, "Is that you?" "What's left?" He stood up and smiled. "How you been, girl, besides barefoot?" And when she laughed, it came out loose and young. "Messed up my legs back yonder. Chamomile." He made a face as though tasting a teaspoon of something bitter. "I don't ever want to hear about it. Always did hate that stuff." Setha balled up her stockings and jammed them into her pocket. "Come on in." "Porch is fine, Setha. Cool out here." He sat back down and looked at the meadow on the other side of the road, knowing the eagerness he felt would be in his eyes. 18 years, she said softly. 18, he repeated. "And I swear I've been walking every one of 'em. Mind if I join you?" And he nodded toward her feet and began unlacing his shoes. "You want to soak them? Let me get you a basin of water." She moved closer to him to enter the house. "Nah, Can't baby feet. A whole lot more tramping they got to do yet." You can't leave right away, Paul D. You got to stay a while. Well, long enough to see baby Suggs anyway. Where is she? Dead. Ah, no. When? 8 years ago now, almost 9. Was it hard? I hope she didn't die hard. Setha shook her head. Soft as cream. Being alive was the hard part. Sorry you missed her, though. Is that what you came by for? That's some of what I came for. The rest is you. But if all the truth be known, I go anywhere these days, anywhere they let me sit down. You looking good? Devil's confusion. He lets me look good as long as I feel bad. And he looked at her, and the word bad took on another meaning. Setha smiled. This is the way they had been. All of the Sweet Home men, before and after Hallie treated her to a mild brotherly flirtation, so subtle you had to scratch for it. Except for a heap more hair and some waiting in his eyes, he looked the way he had in Kentucky. Peach-stone skin, straight-backed. For a man with an immobile face, it was amazing how ready it was to smile, or blaze, or be sorry with you, as though all you had to do was get his attention, and right away he produced the feelings you were feeling. With less than a blink, his face seemed to change. Underneath it lay activity. I wouldn't have to ask about him, would I? You'd tell me if there was anything to tell, wouldn't you? Setha looked down at her feet and saw again the sycamores. I'd tell you. Sure I'd tell you. I don't know any more than I did then. Except for the churn, he thought, and you don't need to know that. You must think he's still alive. No, I think he's dead. It's not being sure that keeps him alive. What did baby Suggs think? Same, but to listen to her, all her children is dead. Claims she felt each one go the very day and hour. When'd she say Hallie went? 1855, the day my baby was born. You had that baby, did you? Never thought you'd make it, he chuckled, running off pregnant. Had to, couldn't be no waitin'. She lowered her head and thought, as he did, how unlikely it was that she had made it. And if it hadn't been for a girl looking for velvet, she never would have. All by yourself, too. He was proud of her and annoyed by her. Proud she had done it, annoyed that she had not needed Hallie or him in the doing. Almost by myself, not all by myself. A white girl helped me. Well, then she helped herself too, God bless her. You could stay the night, Paul D. You don't sound too steady in the offer. Setha glanced beyond her shoulder towards the closed door. Oh, it's truly meant. I just hope you'll pardon my house. Come on in. Talk to Denver while I cook you something. Paul D. tied his shoes, hung them over his shoulder, and followed her through the door straight into a pool of red and undulating light that locked him where he stood. You got company, he whispered, frowning. Off and on, said Setha. Good God! And he backed out of the door onto the porch. What kind of evil you got in here? It's not evil, just sad. Come on, just step through. He looked at her then closely. Closer than he had when she first rounded the house on wet and shining legs, holding her shoes and stockings up in one hand, her skirts in the other. Hallie's girl, the one with the iron eyes and backbone to match. He had never seen her hair in Kentucky, and though her face was 18 years older than when he last saw her, it was softer now, because of the hair. A face too still for her comfort, irises the same color as her skin, which in that still face used to make him think of a mask with mercifully punched-out eyes. Hallie's woman. Pregnant every year, including the years she sat by the fire telling him she was going to run. Her 3 children she had already had packed into a wagon load of others in a caravan of Negroes crossing the river. They were to be left with Hallie's mother near Cincinnati. Even in that tiny shack, leaning so close to the fire you could smell the heat in her dress, her eyes did not pick up a flicker of light. They were like 2 wells into which he had trouble gazing. Even punched out, they needed to be covered, lidded, marked with some sign to warn folks of what that emptiness held. So he looked instead at the fire while she told him, because her husband was not there for the telling. Mr. Garner was dead, and his wife had a lump in her neck the size of a sweet potato, and unable to speak to anyone. She leaned in as close to the fire as her pregnant belly allowed and told him, Paul D., the last of the Sweet Home men. There had been 6 of them who belonged to the farm, Setha the only female. Mrs. Garner, crying like a baby, had sold his brother to pay off the debts that surfaced the minute she was widowed. And then schoolteacher arrived to put things in order. But what he did broke 3 more Sweet Home men and punched a glittering iron out of Setha's eyes, leaving 2 open wells that did not reflect firelight. And now the iron was back, but the face, softened by hair, made him trust her enough to step inside the door, smack into a pool of pulsing red light. And she was right. It was sad. Walking through it, a wave of grief soaked him so thoroughly he wanted to cry. He seemed a long way to the normal light surrounding the table, but he made it, dry-eyed and lucky. "You said she died soft, soft as cream," he reminded her. "That's not baby Suggs," she said. "Who then?" "My daughter, the one I sent ahead with the boys." "She didn't live?" "No. The one I was carrying when I run away is all I got left. Boy's gone too. Both of 'em walked off just before baby Suggs died." Paul D. looked at the spot where the grief had soaked him. The red was gone, but a kind of weeping clung to the air where it had been. Probably best, he thought. If a Negro got legs, he ought to use them. Sit down too long, somebody will figure out a way to tie them up. Still, if her boys were gone. "No man? You here by yourself?" "Me in Denver," she said. "That all right by you?" "That's all right by me." She saw his skepticism and went on. "I cook at a restaurant in town, and I sew a little on the sly." Paul D. smiled then, remembering the betting dress. Setha was 13 when she came to Sweet Home, and already iron-eyed. She was a timely present for Mrs. Garner, who had lost baby Suggs to her husband's high principles. The 5 Sweet Home men looked at the new girl and decided to let her be. They were young and so sick with the absence of women that they had taken to cabs. Yet they let the iron-eyed girl be so she could choose, in spite of the fact that each one would have beaten the others to mush to have her. It took her a year to choose. A long, tough year of thrashing on pallets eaten up with dreams of her. A year of yearning when rape seemed the solitary gift of life. The restraint they had exercised possible only because they were Sweet Home men, the ones Mr. Garner bragged about while other farmers shook their heads in warning at the phrase. "Y'all got boys," he told 'em. "Young boys, old boys, picky boys, stropping boys. Now at Sweet Home, my is men, every one of 'em. Bought 'em that-a-way, raised 'em that-a-way, men, every one." "Beg to differ, Garner. Ain't no men." "Not if you scared they ain't." Garner's smile was wide. "But if you a man yourself, you'll want your to be men too." "I wouldn't have no men around my wife." It was the reaction Garner loved and waited for. "Neither would I," he said. "Neither would I." And there was always a pause before the neighbor or stranger or peddler or brother-in-law or whoever it was got the meaning. Then a fierce argument, sometimes a fight, and Garner came home bruised and pleased, having demonstrated one more time what a real Kentuckian was, one tough enough and smart enough to call his own men. And so they were. Paul D. Garner, Paul F. Garner, Paul A. Garner, Hallie Suggs, and Sixo, the wild man. All in their 20s, minus women, effing cows, dreaming of rape, thrashing on pallets, rubbing their thighs and waiting for the new girl, the one who took baby Suggs' place after Hallie bought her with 5 years of Sundays. Maybe that was why she chose him. A 20-year-old man so in love with his mother that he gave up 5 years of Sabbaths just to see her sit down for a change was a serious recommendation. They waited a year, and the Sweet Home men abused cows while they waited with her. She chose Hallie, and for the first betting, she sewed herself a dress on the sly. "Won't you stay a while? Can't nobody catch up on 18 years in a day." Out of the dimness of the room in which they sat, a white staircase climbed toward the blue and white wallpaper of the second floor. Paul D. could see the beginning of the paper, discrete flecks of yellow sprinkled among a blizzard of snowdrops, all backed by blue. The luminous white of the railing and stairs kept him glancing toward it. Every sense he had told him the air above the stairwell was charmed and very thin. But the girl who walked down out of that air was round and brown, with the face of an alert doll. Paul D. looked at the girl and then at Setha, who smiled, saying, "Here she is, my Denver. This is Paul D., honey, from Sweet Home." "Good morning, Mr. D." "Garner, baby. Paul D. Garner." "Yes, sir." Glad to get a look at you. Last time I saw your mama, you were pushing out the front of her dress. Still is, Setha smiled, provided she can get in it. Denver stood on the bottom step and was suddenly hot and shy. It had been a long time since anybody, good-willed white women, preacher, speaker, or newspaper man, sat at their table, their sympathetic voices called liar by the revulsion in their eyes. For 12 years, long before Grandma Baby died, there had been no visitors of any sort, and certainly no friends, no colored people. Certainly no hazelnut man with too long hair and no notebook, no charcoal, no oranges, no questions. Someone her mother wanted to talk to and would even consider talking to while barefoot. Looking, in fact acting like a girl instead of the quiet, queenly woman Denver had known all her life. The one who had never looked away, who, when a man got stomped to death by a mare right in front of Sawyer's restaurant, did not look away. And when a sow began eating her own litter, did not look away then either. And when the baby's spirit picked up Here Boy and slammed him into the wall hard enough to break 2 of his legs and dislocate his eye, so hard he went into convulsions and chewed up his tongue, still her mother had not looked away. She'd taken a hammer, knocked the dog unconscious, wiped away the blood and saliva, pushed his eye back into his head, and set his leg bones. He recovered, mute and off balance, more because of his untrustworthy eye than his bent legs. And winter, summer, drizzle or dry, nothing could persuade him to enter the house again. Now here was this woman with the presence of mind to repair a doggone savage with pain, rocking her crossed ankles and looking away from her daughter's body, as though the size of it was more than her vision could bear. And neither she nor he had on shoes. Hot, shy, and now Denver was lonely. All that leaving, first her brothers and then her grandmother, serious losses since there was no children willing to circle her in a game or hang by the knees from her porch railing. None of that had mattered as long as her mother did not look away as she was doing now, making Denver downright long for the sign of spite from the baby ghost. She's a fine-looking young lady, said Paul D. Fine-looking, got her daddy's sweet face. You knew my father. Knew him well. Did he, ma'am? Denver fought an urge to realign her affection. Of course he knew you, Daddy. I told you, he's from Sweet Home. Denver sat down on the bottom step. There was nowhere else gracefully to go. They were a twosome, saying your daddy and Sweet Home, in a way that made it clear both belonged to them and not to her. That her own father's absence was not hers. Once the absence had belonged to Grandma Baby, a son deeply mourned because he was the one who had bought her out of there. And then it was her mother's absent husband, and now it was this hazelnut stranger's absent friend. Only those who knew him well, could claim his absence for themselves. Just as only those who lived in Sweet Home could remember it, whisper it, and glance sideways at one another while they did. Again she wished for the baby ghost, its anger thrilling her now where it used to wear her out. Wear her out. We have a ghost in here, she said, and it worked. They were not a twosome anymore. Her mother left off swinging her feet and being girlish. Memory of Sweet Home dropped away from the eyes of the man she was being girlish for. He looked quickly up at the lightning-white stairs behind her. So I hear, he said. But sad, your mama said, not evil. No, sir, said Denver. Not evil, but not sad either. What then? Rebuked. Lonely and rebuked. Is that right? Paul D. turned to Setha. I don't know about lonely, said Denver's mother. Mad, maybe, but I don't see how it could be lonely spending every minute with us like it does. Must be something you got at once. Setha shrugged. It's just a baby. My sister, said Denver. She died in this house. Paul D. scratched the hair under his jaw. Reminds me of that headless bride back behind Sweet Home. Remember that, Setha? Used to roam them woods regular. How could I forget? Worrisome. How come everybody run off from Sweet Home can't stop talking about it? Looked like if it was so sweet you wouldn't have stayed. Girl, who you talking to? Paul D. laughed. True, she's right, Setha. It wasn't sweet and it sure wasn't home. He shook his head. But it's where we were, said Setha, all together. Comes back whether we want it or not. She shivered a little, a light ripple of skin on her arms, which she caressed back into sleep. Denver, she said, start up that stove. Can't have a friend stop by and don't feed him. Don't go into any trouble on my account, Paul D. said. Bread ain't trouble. The rest I brought back from where I work. Least I can do, cooking from dawn to noon, is bring dinner home. You got any objections to Pike? If he don't object to me, I don't object to him. At it again, thought Denver, her back to them. She jostled the kindling and almost lost the fire. Why don't you spend the night, Mr. Garner? You and Ma'am can talk about Sweet Home all night long. Setha took 2 swift steps to the stove, but before she could yank Denver's collar, the girl leaned forward and began to cry. What's the matter with you? I never knew you to behave this way. Leave her be, said Paldy. I'm a stranger to her. That's just it. She ain't got no cause to act up with a stranger. Oh, baby, what is it? Did something happen? But Denver was shaking now and sobbing, so she could not speak. The tears she had not shed for 9 years wetting her far too womanly breasts. I can't no more. I can't no more. Can't what? What can't you? I can't live here. I don't know where to go or what to do, but I can't live here. Nobody speaks to us. Nobody comes by. Boys don't like me. Girls don't either. Honey, honey. What's she talking about? Nobody speaks to you, asked Paul D. It's the house. People don't. It's not. It's not the house. It's us, and it's you. Denver. Leave off, Setha. It can be hard for a young girl living in a haunted house. That can't be easy. It's easier than some other things. Thanks, Setha. I'm a grown man with nothing new left to see or do, and I'm telling you it ain't easy. Maybe you all ought to move. Who owns this house? Over Denver's shoulder, Setha shot Paul D. a look of snow. What you care? They won't let you leave? No. Setha, no moving, no leaving. It's all right the way it is. You got to tell me it's all right with this child half out of her mind? Something in the house braced, and then the listening quiet that followed, Setha spoke. I got a tree on my back and a haint in my house, and nothing in between but the daughter I'm holding in my arms. No more running from nothing. I'll never run from another thing on this earth. I took one journey and I paid for the ticket, but let me tell you something, Paul D. Garner. It costs too much. Do you hear me? It costs too much. Now sit down and eat with us or leave us be. Paul D. fished in his vest for a little pouch of tobacco, concentrating on its contents and the knot of its string while Setha led Denver into the keeping room that opened off the large room he was sitting in. He had no smoke and papers, so he fiddled with the pouch and listened through the open door to Setha, quieting her daughter. When she came back, she avoided his look and went straight to a small table next to the stove. Her back was to him, and he could see all the hair he wanted without the distraction of her face. What tree on your back? Huh? Setha put a bowl on the table and reached under it for flour. What tree on your back? Is something growing on your back? I don't see nothing growing on your back. It's there all the same. Who told you that? White girl, that's what she called it. I never seen it and I never will, but that's what she said it looked like, a chokecherry tree. Trunk, branches, even leaves. Tiny little chokecherry leaves. But that was 18 years ago. Could have cherries too now, for all I know. Setha took a little spit from the tip of her tongue with her forefinger. Quickly, lightly, she touched the stove. And then she trailed her fingers through the flour, parting, separating small hills and ridges of it, looking for mites. Finding none, she poured soda and salt into the crease of her folded hand and tossed both into the flour. Then she reached into a can and scooped half a handful of lard. Deftly, she squeezed the flour through it. Then with her left hand sprinkling water, she formed the dough. I had milk, she said. I was pregnant with Denver, but I had milk for my baby girl. I hadn't stopped nursing her when I sent her on ahead with Howard and Bugler. Now she rolled the dough out with a wooden pin. Anybody could smell me long before he saw me, and when he saw me, he'd see the drops of it on the front of my dress. Nothing I could do about that. All I knew was that I had to get my milk to my baby girl. Nobody was going to nurse her like me. Nobody was going to get to her fast enough or take it away when she had enough and didn't know it. Nobody knew that she couldn't pass air if you held her up on your shoulder, only if she was lying on my knees. Nobody knew that but me, and nobody had her milk but me. I told that to the women in the wagon, told them to put sugar water in a cloth to suck from so that when I got there in a few days she wouldn't have forgot me. The milk would be there and I'd be there with it. Men don't know nothing about much, said Paul D, tucking his pouch back into his vest pocket. But they do know a suckling can't be away from its mother for long. Then they know what it's like to send their children off when your breasts are full. We was talking about a tree, Setha. After I left you, those boys came in and they took my milk. That's what they came in there for. Held me down and took it. I told Mrs. Garner on 'em. She had that lump and couldn't speak, but her eyes rolled out tears. Them boys found out I told on 'em. School teacher made one open up my back, and when it closed it made a tree. Still grows there. They used cowhide on you, and they took my milk. They beat you and you was pregnant, and they took my milk. The fat white circles of dough lined the pan in rows. Once more Setha touched a wet forefinger to the stove. She opened the oven door and slid the pan of biscuits in. As she raised up from the heat, she felt Paul D behind her and his hands under her breasts. She straightened up and knew, but could not feel, that his cheek was pressing into the branches of her chokecherry tree. Not even knowing, he had become the kind of man who could walk into a house and make the women cry. Because with him, in his presence, they could. There was something blessed in his manner. Women saw him and wanted to weep, to tell him that their chest hurt and their knees did too. Strong women and wise saw him and told him things they only told each other. That way past the change of life, desire in them had suddenly become enormous, greedy, more savage than when they were 15, and that it embarrassed them and made them sad, that secretly they longed to die, to be quit of it, that sleep was more precious to them than any waking day. Young girls sidled up to him to confess or describe how well dressed the visitations were that had followed them straight from their dreams. Therefore, although he did not understand why this was so, he was not surprised when Denver dripped tears into the stove fire. Nor 15 minutes later, after telling him about her stolen milk, her mother wept as well. Behind her, bending down, his body an arc of kindness, he held her breasts in the palm of his hands. He rubbed his cheek on her back and learned that way her sorrow, the roots of it, its wide trunk and intricate branches. Raising his fingers to the hooks of her dress, he knew without seeing them or hearing any sigh that the tears were coming fast. And when the top of her dress was around her hips, and he saw the sculpture her back had become, like the decorative work of an ironsmith, too passionate for display, he could think not but say, "Ah, Lord, girl," and he would tolerate no peace until he had touched every ridge and leaf of it with his mouth, none of which Setha could feel because her back skin had been dead for years. What she knew was that the responsibility for her breasts at last was in somebody else's hands. Would there be a little space, she wondered, a little time, some way off to hold off eventfulness, to push busyness into the corners of the room and just stand there a minute or two, naked from shoulder blade to waist, relieved of the weight of her breasts, smelling the stolen milk again and the pleasure of baking bread? Maybe this one time she could stop dead still in the middle of cooking a meal, not even leave the stove, and feel the hurt her back ought to. Trust things and remember things, because the last of the Sweet Home men was there to catch her if she sank. The stove didn't shudder as it adjusted to its heat. Denver wasn't stirring in the next room. The pulse of red light hadn't come back, and Paul D had not trembled since 1856, and then for 83 days in a row, locked up and chained down. His hands shook so bad he couldn't smoke or even scratch properly. And now he was trembling again, but in the legs this time. It took him a while to realize that his legs were not shaking because of worry, but because the floorboards were. And the grinding, shoving floor was only part of it. The house itself was pitching. Setha slid to the floor and struggled to get back into her dress, and while down on all fours, as though she were holding the house down on the ground, Denver burst from the keeping room, terror in her eyes, a vague smile on her lips. "God damn it, hush up," Paul D was shouting, falling, reaching for an anchor. "Leave the place alone. Get the hell out." A table rushed toward him, and he grabbed its leg. Somehow he managed to stand at an angle, and holding the table by two legs, he bashed it about, wrecking everything, screaming back at the screaming house. "You want to fight? Come on, God damn it. She got enough without you. She got enough." and the quaking slowed to an occasional lurch, but Paul D. did not whipping the table around until everything was rock quiet. Sweating and breathing hard, he leaned against the wall in the space the sideboard left. Setha was still crouched next to the stove, clutching her salvage shoes to her chest. The three of them, Setha, Denver, and Paul D., breathed to the same beat, like one tired person. Another breathing was just as tired. It was gone. Denver wandered through the silence to the stove. She ashed over the fire and pulled up the pan of biscuits from the oven. The jelly cupboard was on its back, its contents laying in a heap in the corner of the bottom shelf. She took out a jar and, looking around for a plate, found half of one by the door. These things she carried out to the porch steps where she sat down. The two of them had gone up there, stepping lightly, easy-footed. They had climbed the white stairs, leaving her down below. She pried the wire from the top of the jar, and then the lid. Under it was a cloth, and under that a thin cake of wax. She removed it all and coaxed the jelly onto one half of a plate. She took a biscuit and pulled off its black top. Smoke curled from the soft white insides. She missed her brothers. Bugler and Howard would be 22 and 23 now. Although they had been polite to her during the quiet time and gave her the whole top of the bed, she remembered how it was before. The pleasure they had sitting clustered on the white stairs, she between the knees of Howard or Bugler, while they made up Dye-Witch stories with proven ways of killing her dead. And baby Suggs telling her things in the keeping room. She smelled like bark in the day and leaves at night, for Denver would not sleep in her old room after her brothers ran away. Now her mother was upstairs with the man who had gotten rid of the only other company she had. Denver dipped a bit of bread into the jelly. Slowly, methodically, miserably, she ate it.